welcome to LaunchLeft Podcast. I'm your host, Rain Phoenix. Today's very special guest is Cat Power, and she's launching Linqua Franqa. Don't forget, rate and subscribe. Follow us on all socials at LaunchLeft. Hey, Sean, how are you? I'm glad you're here.
Me too.
We did it.
I can't believe it.
I know, we did
It's
it.
been, what, 4 years? 4, 5, 4?
Yeah, but patience is a virtue. I've learned to understand that more. The older you get, you find a little more of that, because I've always counted myself as extremely impatient, I think is the word. Is that a word? Impatient? That's the word.
Impatient.
Impatient.
Like, outpatient, impatient. Why are you laughing so hard?
Because actually, I think it's isn't it impatient?
You're correct.
Okay.
You are the winner of a new invisible thing. It's just hard. It's hard with all the things. I try to be as open as I can to every opportunity, especially if it's a friend, someone I love. And I feel like since you first approached me, I wanted to really do it, I wanted to be completely present and not, I wanted to be grounded and there for it. But in that effort, I think I made it bigger in my mind. This is my thing. I have to be very present, professional, and it made it so much more precious. I'd never done a podcast before, and I did one a couple of years ago, the first time. And I didn't realize how, it's really just two people talking, to have the affinity with you. I wish that I had obviously done it earlier.
All in good time. And this is the perfect time. And thank you for finding it. I know how busy your life is, even if you take out all the incredible things happening with your music and the sold out concerts coming. Your life is so full with having a child and being a single parent, and just navigating existence is difficult for all of us out here, artist or not.
I think that's why, being broke for so long, really understanding what it means and what it feels like. It's in my nature to, when I was younger, take every job I could get, any job, didn't matter what, as long as I wasn't taking my clothes off. But, and that was for my own personal safety. But I find that I feel like since the pandemic, so many friends around the planet, even people I don't even really know that well, but acquaintance-wise, I feel like so many more people had to really understand what it's like to sit with feelings and to sit with things that I think is creative. Kind of like it's just like part of how we speak. We kind of go through all the feelings and sit with them, and doing things creative helps us get through certain things and learn about the world around us through our, by witnessing the world around us. But I've noticed that the sense of community seems more, I feel like people are kind of done taking shit now. And I think this podcast is an excellent resource, for people who are now turned on or keyed into all the things that happen in the pandemic and stuff. So huge props to you for making it real, and bringing it to people who need it. A lot of people don't even know they're a creative personality type because of their regimented, childhood or way of life, getting through the system or whatever. But I think we could all use the alliance of the creative.
Yeah. You know what?
You're busy.
It does keep you busy.
Hella busy. Being broke. That was circling back to say it's all about being broke, and that's a choice too, making sure that you do the right work.
Right.
But anyway.
I didn't realize you had such an accent, Sean.
Who?
I love it so much. I didn't realize you had such you have a strong Southern accent.
No, I don't. What do you mean? I don't.
It's beautiful. I don't know why I didn't notice, but it reminds me of being, my Gainesville, Athens, Georgia years where, it's just like a beautiful Southern lilt you have. And I want to remember now.
I try to conceal it.
Why? It's so sexy. It's really sexy. It's beautiful. You have memories I don't, and I want them. And so I remember telling the ones of meeting, you told me we met when I was a teenager, and with River and I on tour. I don't remember that, but I would love to hear that memory if you have it.
Absolutely. I have this friend, my best friend from high school in Atlanta, Her name is Jenny Lee. She's from Peru originally. And she was doing in high school, like in middle school, she'd gotten some modeling, whatever. She was a ballerina. So she got some modeling work as a young girl. And there was this guy, same name as mine, spelled differently, Sean Marshall, this cool dude. And he had gotten her a job for something else, and a campaign, some print work. And then he said, hey, call your friend Sean. It was after school. I think it was it may have been a Thursday night. And she called me and said, hey, Sean said that River Phoenix's band is playing at, I think it was the space that used to be the Metroplex, or it was the Metroplex. He said, hey, bring your friend Sean and greet him when they pull up in their RV. Just, have some nice people around, to welcome them to Atlanta. So we pull up after school. We go right to the driveway down Little 5 Point. And y'all had the RV out there. And the guy who opened the door, I knew the guy. And so we went in, and you were on the couch on the left, and River was kind of pacing around the dining areas, like a wooden, kind of like, those California homes, like, what do they call them? Craftsman.
Oh, okay.
It was a craftsman home, very dark and wooden inside. College students who went, I think, to Georgia State and Georgia Tech were the roommates there. And one of the guys I knew from where I worked, and he's like, hey, small world. So I remember, because when I was a kid, how old would River be today?
54.
Okay. So how old was he when he did Stand By Me?
Yeah, he'd be 54 this year. He would be 53 right now. He was 12.
Okay.
I think.
That makes sense. So I had seen, like everybody else my age, probably been 10, going on 11. I'd seen Stand By Me. And of course, there's that scene when he's under the tree and he says, and I felt the same way in this time of my life because of, difficulty in childhood and stuff. And when he said, I just want to go where nobody knows me. And, watching him grow as an actor, it felt like I was kind of growing up with him, as a peer. But I'll never forget that scene because I felt the same way, It's very intense, that scene when he's under the tree.
Yeah.
And what's his name? Gordy. Yeah. Telling Gordy, I just want to go where nobody knows me. And so anyway, so I pull in, and of course, seeing River, met him briefly. I just was like shell-shocked. I was also a very shy kid. I went to so many different schools growing up as a kid that I didn't, I really generally had one friend per school, if I was lucky to even have one. And I just immediately beeline to the kitchen. I know my face turned red, I never kissed a boy and that kind of thing. I didn't kiss a boy till I was 18. So I made a beeline to the dining room, and I went straight back to the kitchen. I was like, okay, calm down. And I turned around, and he's coming. He's in the kitchen. He's like, hey, super friendly. He was super friendly, relaxed. And I was like, hey. And I saw people coming behind him. So I kind of was like hanging out there, and I saw the empty couch. You had gotten up from the couch. So I sat on the opposite end, like in the corner, and he came right through the office, and he came right towards me, and he came and he sat right next to me, like the next couch on the corner right beside me.
Uh-huh.
And then the other people kept following him through the kitchen, coming into that room. And I remember you were looking at me, and you were looking at them like, who are these fucking people? Why are these people here? And I remember feeling like, I feel the same way. This is a setup. I want to leave. This isn't comfortable for these guys. This is not cool. This isn't private. Like, they need a private space. And so he's like super charming and trying to make me laugh. I remember, because I know that my hands were pressed together in between my knees, and I was like just looking down, like, oh my God, don't talk to me. He's talking to me. Oh my God. Oh my God. And he's like laughing, and, I think he was able to just, I don't know, he had compassion. He had compassion. I think that the other people were didn't want the small talk, I think. But anyway, and so he was really funny and like warming me up, and I felt comfortable to laugh. And then you sat down on the couch, and it was sound check. So you guys got in the RV, and we got in our car, So we get to the thing, y'all sound checking, and they thought, that we were of age, which we weren't. So I got a beer, and I remember Michael Stipe came. I met him later, like maybe a year later, or no, 2 years later. I met him in Athens with a friend of mine. But anyway, I didn't know Michael at that time. And I know you were very close with Michael as well. And I know he was close with River. And River goes, people started coming in, and he's like, and he kind of, when someone's talking to a group and they kind of like pat you with the back of their hand, like, like on your arm. And he's like, hey, y'all. And he pats me, and he looks at me, and he looks at everybody. He says, let's go backstage. Michael, come on. So we all kind of, there's like maybe 6 of us or 8. And we go up to the back, and it's like got a big couch. There might even be a foosball table in the back. And I remember River and Michael and was making jokes, and you were chilling. I think you weren't as engaged. You weren't really engaging. I think you were talking to someone in the band, and then River does a split. Do you remember
this? No.
They had some kind of contest about splits.
Yeah.
So it was him and Michael. And River won. He did the best split. And so then it was like time really went fast, and it was time for you guys to play. And I went down to the bar, and I just watched from the same place we had ordered drinks. And, the songs were really beautiful and fun. It was a super energetic. I remember people looking like they felt happy to be close to him, to be, to be around that energy. And it was super joyful. It felt, there wasn't like that sort of posturing, like rock and roll, like sexualized posturing at all.
Right.
It was it felt like a thriving. It didn't seem very rehearsed, but the song seemed very known. Like it was just easy and fun. And it felt like, almost honestly, it felt like, like a church, like jamboree, like you'd have like a Pentecostal kind of church, with the family members playing kind of feeling, and people were psyched. Everybody was happy. And then afterwards, we went up to the backstage, and more beer and louder, a lot more people. And I noticed he was kind of pacing a little bit, because I think that there were a lot of people that he didn't know that were like just filing in the back room. And then you had said, it's time to go. We got to go. And so everybody kind of left, and we're all kind of hanging on the bar. And then that was that.
Wow.
And I just, well, I'd always had, like, to this day, I mean, now I'm more like, I have a lot more self-esteem and a lot more confidence as a woman, as a human. And now I will definitely say goodbye and give you a hug. And I don't care if you don't even like me. I'll be much more, present myself like in good tidings or whatever. Maybe we will never meet again vibe. Because of maybe something like this that happened. But so we left, and we're walking to Jenny's sister's Volkswagen Rabbit, red Volkswagen Rabbit. And I look up, and your guys' RV's across the street, like perpendicular, like parallel to the parking lot where our car is. And I look up, and I see someone go on, and I see you go on, and I see him like, look over at me, and oh my God, he's looking at me. Oh my God. And so I went, switch the door handle, the old Rabbit, and it won't click. It's locked. And I'm like, Jenny, unlock the door. Because he's looking at me. I mean, I never held hands. I held hands with a boy once for like 3 seconds. But anyway, so I look up again, and he's crossed his leg, and he's leaning against the RV, like relaxed. And he's got his arm, like his arm bent up, and he's got his hand open, like high five. And he's just waving his hands back and forth, like a puppet, like back and forth. And I smiled, and I just like smiled at him, like, I know I look insane because I'm too shy to even fucking like I saw you, and like I just psychically, I just laughed and smiled, and he smiled, and he got in the thing, and I wait, and then I got in the car. That's it.
So sweet and so River to your nerves and anxiety at that time and shyness. When you tell me that he kind of like followed you and sat right next to you, that's what he would do with anyone who is withdrawn. And he was always just so empathetic and, like you said, very compassionate as a person. And he would find the person who was most uncomfortable and go try to make them feel comfortable. I love hearing that as a first person story because it was very true about him. He has wonderful fans, and some of the comments that I have read in the past about things like that, like him seeking out the person who is feeling strange at a party and talking to them, like, they'll share their stories. And so, hearing it from you too makes total sense. I love hearing that. And, that's so wild. You really have a good memory. I don't remember any of that. None of it.
You were so protective of him.
Yeah,
you were,
always,
exactly.
Always. Yeah.
That you were like the mother hen. You were like, you knew.
I can be too protective, which is funny. I've actually had, I think it was Michael Stipe once who was like, I got this, Rain. Because I'd bow up as if I was a bodyguard. That's the funniest part. I just get really protective of people.
You can see him coming a mile away.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll just get real protective. And it is a maternal thing, definitely. And I think it did come.
Love.
Yeah, having a lot of siblings.
And creatives don't have that.
Yeah.
People exploit them for their openness, and they're seeing those human emotions and activating because they want to, communicate with the higher frequency, because that's really what we do, what guides us, really, what we believe in secretly, probably without even knowing. And it only makes sense that you would, see that in your people, Michael being so, popular, like your brother. Of course, those lines seem similar. I could see that.
Yeah. And now that we're on the subject of you being very young woman, and to me, you're one of the most empathic artists I've met. But I'm so curious how and what was the moment that music found you as a young adult or a child when you first felt that as a pathway for you?
I think it was my grandma, because I was raised by her till I was 5 in Forest Park, Georgia, which is near College Park. You'll hear like Ludacris talk about College Park and stuff. I learned to read it really young because she would read the Bible every night, and I'd follow her finger with the nightlight, the reading light. And so when she'd come home from work and she'd cook, I was like her DJ, 3 and 4 and 5 years old. She'd say, oh, well, she'd be like cracking beans or peeling potatoes or whatever. And she'd say, oh, why don't you go, Charlene, why don't you go and find that, Johnny Cash song, Jackson, and put that on the record player? Or, oh, why don't you go get that Patsy Cline song, Strange, for me, darling? So I was actually literally, figuratively finding music, for someone at such a young age. She would sometimes record me singing. She would just record me singing all the time, different songs. And it's funny because on the tape, you could hear her laughing because I could imitate different voices from a really young age naturally. I think that's why she recorded me. So when I met my mom and dad and stepdad, they were in bands and, singers and all that kind of lifestyle in the 70s with, rock and roll and drugs and different environments with different, kinds of people. Patrick Kelly, actually, the designer, he wasn't my legal guardian, but he took care of me, after I would get home from kindergarten and first grade. And in his world, it was all black music. It was, black models coming over and then dressing me up. And it was all like old soul and that kind of stuff. And all the models, beautiful, different colored, cinnamon, mocha, espresso, these gorgeous different hairstyles, beads, cornrows, fro, tight curl, shade, straightened. All these beautiful models would come on, he'd sit in, and that's where I learned a lot of soul and, more Black music was from him and them singing all the time, because I knew about singing in church with my grandma. And I saw my dad singing and my mom singing and my stepdad singing, rock stuff. But the singing was always a really big part of my life, even when I moved around and grew up. But being a musician I wanted to be a painter. I wanted to be a writer. I used to write short stories when I was little, but then later in high school, I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to be like a war photographer, tell the truth. I wanted to be the story. But I had a 10th grade education because I failed 11th grade and tried to take 11th grade again and couldn't do it. Got kicked out. So I was working at a young age and not really able to focus on what I really wanted to do. But music happened through friendships, and I'm blessed because I think because of that connection, that safe space with my grandmother and Patrick, because I'd sing with her in church and I'd sing with him and his models like every day, just bullshitting down, in the platform heels with Patrick and my grandmother in church. I think that singing is mostly who I am as a creative, because it's what I've been doing since I was little.
So would you say that high school is when you started, like when did you go, okay, obviously music was very important to you and singing was just in you. That's what you always did, but it wasn't necessarily what you thought you were going to do. At what point did you, I'm guessing through high school friendships would be my first guess, because that's when kind of something about the music you listen
Hell
to.
No.
No?
I had one friend, Jenny Lee, the girl I mentioned, she would listen to Sundays and The Cure or Depeche Mode and stuff. But I would just get home and like all my parents, stepdads, grandma, all their records are trash. I just always listened to vinyl and college radio. Music was like I could go away, I could not go away. I could be transported to like this other frequency that my mental state could flourish. The weight of the world was more gentle. I could be myself listening to music that I loved. So it was really much like a medicine for me personally. But I didn't start playing guitar until I was 18. There was this guy, I went to go see the Cramps in high school, and there was this guy that opened up for him. And really appreciating all types of music, like country, for example, and 50s, Otis, different things that were older, Buddy Holly, different things. I saw this guy opening up for the Cramps. His name is Dexter Wamweber, and he was in this band called Flat Zero Jet. And I'd never seen anybody that listened or knew of that sort of aesthetic of songwriting. Everything else was like Jesus was or punk rock and different hardcore. Anyway, he was playing this guitar, a Silvertone from the 50s. That was when I was 16. So then when I was 18, my friend and this band was selling his, and it took me a couple of weeks for $75, and I bought it. It stayed in, I have a Dan Electro in my corner right now, Silvertone right now. It was standing in the corner just like that. I just look at it. And then one afternoon, I was playing 3 records on cycle at that point in my life, because that's what I do. I generally fall in love with like certain records and I play them over and over. At that time, it was Aretha Franklin's "This Girl's in Love with You" with Dwayne Allman and Spinner Oldham and Muscle Shoals.
Mm-hmm.
And it was Sinead O'Connor, Lion and Cobra, and Joni Mitchell Blue.
Wow.
And that's all I listened to on my days off. I didn't have money to go to a movie. My best friend was a stripper. I would go hang out with her during the day because it was like 2 blocks from where my apartment was. One day I just picked up the guitar and I just started picking it. I still have the same pick style. I still just use the flesh of my fingers, the flesh of my thumb,
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I started.
Wow.
For that year, yeah, that's when I started writing because I was writing poetry, and that's when I started writing songs.
How did that parlay to playing out? Did you just start playing and someone said you should do this for human beings? Or how did that move from you alone in your apartment to playing for the people?
All these guys I worked with at this pizza place called Fellini's Pizza in Little Five Points in Atlanta, that was like a mecca for bands. And P.S., all the fucking bands were dudes, all of them.
Right.
There's one girl, Debbie Richardson, from this band called Magic Bones. Anyway, I worked at this pizza place. I ran the register. I worked it in high school. So I've been there for 3 years, a few years at this point. And my friend who I met there, amazing guitar player, Mark Moore, everybody who worked there were like 5 different restaurants, the same company. Everybody who worked at all these restaurants were in bands. So whenever we'd be done with our shift, like 2:30 in the morning, we go to somebody's basement, practice space, living room. I would always play drums. Always. I love drums. So for about 6 months, my friend, Mark Morgan, wanted to start a band with me, but I knew he wanted to start a band because he wanted to get chicks and have that sort of, and he was amazing, But I had this father figure at the time. I always said, no, I don't want to be in a band. Thinking like, I got shit to do. I got to save my money so I can go to college and, be a painter and go to art school and make it up in New York and try to get into art school and be a painter, work at a bakery, and get to my art. That was what my brain was like. So I was super shy and a total tomboy. And he would always bug me, start a band. About 6 months later, my father figure at that time, he still has the fans online. It's called Low Life. And he used to run this radio show called on WRAK called Destroy All Music. And he came into Fellini's with this guitar player who was one of the greatest guitar players of that time. His name was Damon Moore. Mark and Damon have both since passed, but I had a huge crush on Damon. He was very stoic, very beautiful, gentle, kind, quiet, incredible. Like the way he played slide, just so beautiful, effortless, almost like Coltrane, the way he played guitar. And they walk in, and Mark says, hey, Glenn's my father's very good, Glenn Thrasher. He's who I'm going to be working on my book with, because I'm writing a book, Rain. He said, Glenn said that if you and I start a band, that he'll be in the band. And I laughed as I'm getting their pitcher of beer. I said, what the fuck would Glenn play? And he said, drums. And I was insulted because he knows that I love drums. And then Damon is standing there and he said, yeah. And Damon said that if Glenn joins the band, he'll join the band. And I look at Damon like you got to be kidding me. And Damon smiles and he nods yes. And behind him comes this dude, really sweet guy, Fletcher Legereau. And he said, yeah. And Fletcher said that he'll just make noise with his amp. And I was like, look, don't want to be in a band. And he said, well, let's just jam. What time do you get off work? So I went, because I love jamming, and I got there and Glenn was on the drums. He had like an entire Camel unfiltered. He was basically smoking in a long ash. I didn't realize that Glenn and Damon's drug addiction to heroin was getting worse. I didn't realize that. When you're younger, you're a little naive. I was 19. And the addiction that I grew up in my family was different. I wasn't friends with my parents, I should say. So it's like a different perspective of witness. Anyway, so the next day I'm at work and I get a phone call. It's Mark. And he says, hey, we need a name for our band. We have a show on Thursday. This is Tuesday. And I was like, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? We're not a band. And why are you asking me for a name of the band? Because you're the lead singer. Why the fuck would I be the lead singer? And while I was at the register, there's this old guy that worked on the railroad in Atlanta, and he always wore this Cat Diesel powered cap, like old as hell cap. And I said, why would I be the lead singer? And he said, because you're the girl. And I looked up and I said, cat power. And I hung up the phone. It was my way of saying fuck off.
Right.
And about 2 hours later, because Glenn Thrasher did his fanzine Low Life at a Kinko's because he worked the graveyard shift. So right before I got off work, right before we closed, they all came in. And there was a Nirvana poster and a Hole poster and a Smashing Pumpkins poster. This was before they took off, before they exploded. And they put up a flyer. Glenn put up a flyer right there, black and white, Cat Power. And I was like, oh, fuck. So then they think it's funny and they think it's cute. And so Thursday, the next day, I see everyone's like, oh my God, I was so excited about your show. They had recorded a jamming. Glenn had given the cassette to a music journalist, David T. Riley.
Look at you. Your memory is insane. Okay.
I know, it's called Eidetic. It has to be visual or I don't remember anything. But I'm almost done.
Okay, we're here. The posters are up. He gives it to this guy.
It was in it's like the Village Voice in Atlanta called the Creative Low Feed. And it said,
I remember it.
Thursday night, bands to see, just bands to see, Cat Power, Mark Moore from blah, 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 Glenn Thrasher from blah, 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 Damon Moore from blah, 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 Fletcher, Lee Giroux from King Kill 33 Band, and Sean Marshall from, the cute girl from Fellini's as lead singer. And I was like, fuck. So after work, I go home, and I had Thursday off, coincidentally. They knew this shit. So I go home, my old roommate, Robert Hayes, who introduced me to Michael years ago, he passed in a car accident when I turned 20 the following year. He was my best friend. And he'd come in. He was in this band called the Jody Grind. He played stand-up bass. He was very close with the guy Dexter Romweber from the Flat-Eared Jets, coincidentally. But anyway, we always smoke a bowl and make an espresso and just talk whenever he'd come in from whatever tour he was on. So we're sitting there, a little stoned, and he's like, you got your show tonight. And I'm like, are you fucking crazy? And he's like, I hear you. I hear you in your room with your little song. And I got so pissed off, he's like, you know what? You're a chicken. He called me a chicken. That's like very in the South. That's like.
Yeah, very insulting. Yeah.
He called me a fucking chicken. I'll show you a fucking chicken. Let's fucking go.
Yeah, exactly.
So we go.
Good job. He did the right thing.
He knew.
He got you on the stage.
Well, no, we pull up, cops everywhere, people getting arrested, but I can hear Mark and Damon and Fletcher and Glenn down there making noise, playing music. And it was beautiful. So I went down into the thing. There was still a lot of people there, and there they were playing, and it looked like something out of the room was all mirrored, this performance space called Klang with a K, Klang. Glenn Thrasher used to get people from New York from the no wave scene to play there. Of course, I didn't know that because I was always at Jesus was there with Ozzy or something, butthole surfers. But I just laughed. They sounded amazing, and Mark looked amazing, posturing with his sexy long hair, and it was beautiful. And I laughed and I laughed. Then the next day, I went around the corner in Cabbagetown where we all used to live, and I hung out with my friend Debbie, who was the lead singer for Magic Bone. And she said, David T's putting out our CD on Friday, and we're playing at the Claremont Lounge. And that's where my best friend worked. That was a strip club where my best friend worked, where I think my mom was also a dancer. And I was like, no way. I can't believe you're playing there. Super small. In the hotel above where Gigi Allen used to live, because he lived there for a minute. But anyway, I told her yes, because I love her. Brilliant, amazing woman. Magic Bone's the name of the band. And anyway, and Damon was in her band. And I knew that it would just be our friends, we didn't have songs, but it was like the spirit of, I guess, punk rock or, and feeling like I'm not a chicken. So I did it. The next night I went, and they were already on stage, and all the friends, gone to see all their bands. Were in the audience, like maybe 40 people. It was loud as hell. I went back in where the strippers change and went out on the stage, where you're supposed to dance, and I didn't have a mic, and I just started playing my guitar really loud, like rhythm, just chords, and just started screaming, and screaming my lyrics, and that was our first show
at the Claremont Lounge.
Yeah.
So that was the first time you actually took the stage as Cat Power. The previous time you just like laughed at them. They did this whole flyer thing. They made it a big deal, but you didn't even perform. You didn't sing that night. You sang that.
No.
Wow.
No.
How
I
interesting.
wasn't holding any beer, so I knew I wouldn't get arrested. So I just left.
Kind of full circle that if that's where, your best friend danced and your mom used to dance, that you went in and sang in that space and sort of made, it sounds almost like I don't know, how would you describe that symbolism? Because it's pretty wild. That was the first place you sang,
I have a lot of those vortex stepping stones in my life. Throughout my life, I've had a lot of, I think it's because of traveling around and having that eidetic memory where, I have PTSD. So like my memory is always on, my eyes and ears are always really on. And that's why I used to drink so much because, it's a lot to take in. It's a lot to take in all the sounds and the memory. It's a lot. And I think that's why I used to drink so much, because, I wasn't ever addicted to alcohol, but it just helped, me focus on the person in front of me. Because and that's the funny thing about my life, as knowing you and knowing, we have mutual friends, and all my friendships are actually one-on-one. Like when you and I started, I know that we went on tour together, but my friendships are really just like one-on-one. I don't have a clique, So when I'm around, like if after I play a show, for example, I've been doing that for a really long time. So after I play a show and I'm backstage with all my friends, it's a lot to make sure that I am present with each person. And each person in that tradition of rock and roll, you have a drink. And so it wasn't that I was an addict. It's the habit, the behavior of that enters in, and the stress of making sure, like, I want this person to know that I love them. And this person standing right beside them doesn't even know how special this person is. They don't even know how special each of them are to me, and for what reason, for how long, and from where, and who said she said, she said. But my goal is to one day hopefully bring all these people together so I don't have to drink alcohol to celebrate with each of them when I see them after each show.
Yeah.
Because I know we've spoken about addiction, and when you performed your poem, your piece, what is the piece called?
The Artist's Secular Prayer. That was so wild that you took that and broadcast it. I was totally not expecting that, but we did that for that European tour with you. Yeah.
It was so powerful for me. And that's what you can, I think as creatives, that's all we have, have faith that someone out there it will really, like an arrow, they'll be walking around with that golden arrow for the rest of their life, shooting that arrow out to others, But that really hit home with me, that piece.
Oh my goodness. That was such a powerful time getting to spend a little time with you and meeting you. It gave me so much. And it was short and sweet, but so formative. I feel like you are incredibly empathic. And one of the ways that shows is not just through your creative, but also how much you amplify social justice initiatives and things that are really causing pain and suffering. But it's like
LaunchLeft.
I learned so much just by following you from, my personal account and your social media of what's going on all over the world. You are scouring, filtering, researching, and posting while having a very busy career, which I also want to get to because I'm so curious how you landed on this beautiful reimagining of Bob Dylan's songs, like how that's where you're at right now. And it's just been so stunning to watch because your own songwriting and your own voice is so important. But it's wild to see you chose one of the greats, and that how did that come? Like, I'm so curious about that. How did that come to be? And he was okay with it. And now you're traveling all over the world with these sold out at some of the most amazing, prestigious venues singing Bob Dylan's songs. Wow. That when I met you, whenever way back, I always think of you more as like original songwriter and beautiful lyricist and voice. And so it's been wild to see how you've moved to honoring another artist that you obviously have a lot of respect for their songwriting. And how has that been for you? But God, I just brought up two subjects, but those are the two things.
No, that's okay.
I guess I just wanted to make sure that if anyone's out there listening, that you follow Cat Power, not just for your voice and your music, but also that you are a wellspring of connecting people to causes. In your stories alone, there have been so many things. I was like, I didn't know that was happening in the world. Oh my gosh, yes, I need to sign that petition. I need to do. You always have these action points. And so thank you. Really, all I wanted to say about that was thank you for doing that and for being a voice. There's such a strange, almost at times stigma around activism and art. Sometimes people say, shut up and sing your song, right? Or just play. We don't need your opinion. But then when you think about it over the ages, the people who use their voice, they really made impact. And the concerts, the benefit concerts, the amount of money raised to actually feed people, to actually go towards helping others, and what that did to the artists that were involved. And full circle, it created more goodness in the world. So I, of course, advocate for that.
I know that humanity is a culture of community. We have always been before the television. Before the television, we would gather with one another and discuss and learn old wives' tales, and indigenous thinking was like, just got totally abolished in this country. But, part of women not being able to walk legally outside in America after 8 p.m., not being able to show their ankle. There's so many different layers of history that we only had each other as a resource. And I feel like there's like so many more human beings that care about dignity and humanity and resourcefulness than there are people who are, narcissists, sociopaths. It's just the reality of the world. The problem is that people that are narcissist sociopaths tend to be really, really successful because they will betray, they will do whatever it takes to be that successful. And that's the problem. Since the Arab Spring, we can all thank those who sacrificed themselves. The Buddhist gentleman who lit himself on fire. I forgot what that's called.
I think self-immolation.
Self-immolation that launched the Arab Spring. Facebook, that my belief is that's what conjured and created the Occupy movement in this nation, in America, and that spanned out. It went also other places. I think that sort of remembrance of things that we've seen of, the 60s, the protest movement, when Bob stopped the protest and, went out into the major leagues, and stuck with it, and they were booing him. He took the Hawks out, and they didn't stop. They didn't give up on their tour. People were booing him. They kept doing it every night. But Dylan, like in 1966, back when the revolution started after, he went electric and the music kind of like really opened up. People started moving to LA. They wanted to do this wild. They wanted to do something wild. They wanted to express themselves. Then you had like the hippies, then you had like people protesting Vietnam. You had like these young people in college, like quitting school, camping out. This Black Lives Matter, for example, during the pandemic, I think it forced a lot of these, white women that went to the Women's March who could never talk about certain things because it was uncomfortable, or they had a difficult time talking to their family about maybe their family members were Republicans or something, So they kind of just bowed, like we've been trained to do in society around the world, and just let sleeping dogs lie because they don't want to aggravate, they don't want to be dominated or invalidated or beat up or outcast in the family or whatever. But a lot of these women, white women, showed up for that rally. And I think Black Lives Matter, when they would cut off streets and highways and kind of force people to look at their internal narrative of like, not what side are they on necessarily, but how are your daily actions and communications affecting the world around you, or the world that you live in, or the world that others live in? Are you a part of the problem, or are you a part of the resistance? Are you a part of liberation, or are you a part of, capitalist gluttony and denial? But I think that when I had the offer to play the concert at Royal Albert Hall, November, very few months ago, came out, whatever. But the year before was the end of the covers record tour, and I thought I got this offer to play at the Royal Albert Hall, and my first response was, "Well, I want to do that record," because that was such a pivotal time in history, but in music history, because that's when Bob was like doing these protests and singing these incredible songs, and it was such a crucial moment in time where he brought the critical thinking to an enormous amount of people. And Bob is a 19th century French literature academic. He's a writer, he's an amazing writer. So he's read everything, and he's heard everything. And for him to be a songwriter and to really be authentic in his knowledge and in his world, to be able to tell the temperature of the street, kind of like hip hop or punk rock, that I felt like I wanted to honor him, because it would have been the last show of the tour for the covers record. And the BBC were playing 5 of the singles from that record. It was my 3rd covers record. And the BBC were playing 5 different songs from that record, which is unheard of for me. I mean, so I thought it's a perfect bookend for the tour. I didn't even think of recording it. I thought later that I'd want to record it as like a document. I was totally broke, but anyway, I was able to get that to happen through my record label Domino. But I was reflecting on, well, if I record it, then maybe, Bob's still walking on earth. A lot of people do post-mortem records and stuff. I felt like, what a great end to the covers record tour if I just play the show. If I record it, what a beautiful nod to the man himself, who's still running around writing incredible songs. I mean, his last 2 records are profound. And those who know Bob's music and understand how incredible he is as a writer, will understand what I'm saying. And I felt like, why not just record it and let it live, let it have a breath for Bob in his waking life, instead of waiting for someday maybe doing it. And that's really it, at a time when I felt like people have found community around the world through Instagram, through learning, through this device, through technology, which is a blessing, for us to communicate around the world with each other. And with shadow banning and freedom of speech being really kind of at risk, especially in Florida, in the South in general, consistently, and for women constantly, people of color, indigenous constantly. I just thought, maybe these words and these songs will enhance people to think about the moment in time we're standing in right now, like when Bob chose to gain a wider audience, what he was bringing to their critical thinking through his writing. It really it sparked something really important. I'm not saying that this record will do such, but it's just a question of balance, of looking at history, where we've come from and where we're at right now. Not even when it was recorded, at that time at Royal Albert Hall, but right now today, whoever listens to it next week, like that's the important aspect of doing the record and wanting to record it, because not everybody is a creative. Not everybody has access to internet. Not everybody has access to running water or freedom to vote or to read. And I think that that's why the people who I try to connect with on social media, I have alliances that I've tried to water and care for and, be and partner with, because I think those of us who know that there is an urgency with our planet ecologically. There is an urgency with our socioeconomic issue internationally. We have the tools to create community, even if we feel lonely or depressed or older or just a kid or poor or whatever you feel your weaknesses or your loss is. There is community for everybody. And that's why I appreciate, you noticing and attempting what you are doing with what you do with LaunchLeft at a time when we desperately needed a call to action on so many issues that about, and so many people, that listen to you and follow you and pay attention to what you're doing. That's all. Those are the people in the community that are part of the movement. And that's a big movement. And it doesn't have a name, and it's easy to recognize one another. And that's the blessing. You can have a simple conversation with somebody on the bus or, your cab driver at the restaurant or, at the post office. You can have a simple conversation back and forth and you will have met. Your chances of meeting somebody within the movement are so enormous now.
Mm-hmm.
It was very different, I think, when our parents were trying to create the movement,
Yeah. Yeah, I do. And we're already there. We're already all collaborating, and creatives, everything that we do, whether it's film, music.
But the resistance
but there, yes, but that's also what's wild, and it's very confusing, because while there's all this solidarity and coming together, there's also this other piece, which is the habit to seeing things through a capitalistic lens, like a step on your neighbor to get somewhere, right? So creating spaces and just echoing out the importance of exactly what you said, really having these simple conversations with people and reminding us, even though it's a little confusing, we're doing it. We're doing our best. It's tough, but it's also always been tough. And it's also incredibly beautiful. We don't have to fall into the habit that seems to be the most strong one out there, which is to want to be rich and famous, right? That sort of that's
the American dream, that's the lie.
Exactly.
It got told to our parents.
Yeah.
That's the lie that got told to our parents, through the television. My mom sat in front of the TV when it came out, when she was 5 or whatever, when she was born. And that's where the brain got washed with the commercials, the ideology, the white prism. And it's a lie. And it was only to make someone, many, many, many white men, very wealthy and ruling class around the world. And it worked. It is so depressing and it is so tragic. But at the same time, I feel like we're not allowed to really be our true selves with social media because of the attack on wordplay. The attack on freedom of speech, the attack on the construct of, cancel culture and persistence of finding the wrong.
Yeah.
Finding the wrong where, like you said,
Yeah.
we all got a journey and nobody's on the same page completely.
Right.
There are different words and different sentences that skew off our pages that are a whole lifetime to each of us.
Mm-hmm.
But that common denominator, that Bob Marley song, Zimbabwe, where he talks about, every man has a heart in their chest, we're all equal. And that's what has not been projected
exactly
through these movies and in these industries and in the culture, American culture. It's been advertised as such, but it's a falsehood, and everybody getting away with all of it knows that. And it's sad and it's depressing, but we don't have time for that. We have to make sure we take care of ourselves and those closest to us, and keep bringing joy, like you said. Keep maintaining the joy and keep maintaining, present time. Keep maintaining the joy in the present time and the health.
And try not to fall into the same pattern that we have fallen into, which is always an us against them mentality, and forgetting our shared
Correct.
humanity, even with our enemies and even with the people who are making all the money by screwing everyone else over. At the same time, they have a heart in their chest. And so how do we kind of break the spell that was created that overtook them? And how do we also make sure it doesn't overtake us in the process of trying to do that? So it's a very, it is complex, but I think the simplest way I always try to go back to is we all want to be safe and happy. That's the bottom line for everyone. And then the perversion that made money or things more important than taking care of each other, that seems to be the trouble spot. And then how do you undo that? I don't know if it's by fighting as much as by dissolving it. And how do you do that? By looking maybe like you said.
How you do it is you put women in power globally around the world.
Hell yeah.
That's how you do it, period.
I agree.
And that's the only way, and it has to be an election. Women have to choose.
I kind of wish I was a guy right now that said, I agree. Because of course, we're both
There's
women.
Very few of them that admit to agreeing.
There's plenty though. There are many allies that are men too that would probably be into it.
Enough.
Right.
There's not enough. There's not enough. And number two, there's more of us on earth than there are men. That always boggles my son's mind. But my son, it's like raising children, they're geniuses. They don't have a filter. They have so much brain imagination. They see things clearly. They don't have a veil. And I find that the communications with my son, just the little questions in the talk, some of these things help me crack through something that I hadn't thought about. And I think that's one of the ways, is to listen to the young people. These kids today, like these high school students, they know what's up, and the problem in this country, and probably obviously everywhere else with the caste system, because of colonialism, you won't have many wealthy kids going to school with poor kids, generally, ever. So that system is the first system that has to be cracked. That whole system.
Let's get back to the part where women
are voted in.
Yeah, talk a little bit. Talk
just one damn woman.
So talk a little bit about that. How about you and this maybe will be the final thing we chat about, so we don't keep you all day. So I like what you just said. You actually had a solution, because sometimes I just see it as complexity, and the best way through for me is to take personal responsibility and try every day to work on my lens and the way I am in the world, and why, the people that I'm around.
You are not alone.
And that's the only thing I can do that I know has impact,
Millions of us in this country alone we're at the same table and we're all in different places. The reality is if I had, graduated from school, went to college and worked at this place all these years, I wouldn't listen to a damn word I said. But because I've traveled the world for 30 years, around, met a million different kind of people, different types of people, different types of languages, different types of environments. I've seen with my mind, my eyes, my heart, my soul, I've seen humanity. I've seen darkness and I've seen light. And I know in my experiences, there are incredible, powerfully prepared men that are willing to support matriarchal society. I've seen them. I've also seen women through talking with them. Their daily issues in life are much more than just their job or their family. Mother, wife, business owner, community leader. There's so many parts of a woman. There's a thing I saw on Instagram recently with Meryl Streep, and she was sitting beside Robert De Niro, Martin Scorsese, and I can't remember the other guy. But she said, women have always, we know how to speak men. We've always known. We've always had to. And she said, but men, and she kind of skirted away a little bit and said, men really don't, know how to speak women. And the reaction, you can find it, and the reaction of the men sitting around her, she was alone up there. And that was really, one of those sad but true realizations of like, for this witness, like, wow, she really, they're really looking at her like, what does she mean? That's what I've seen. I've seen a lot of women communicate incredibly about what you and I are trying to spit out, and I think about the past that women, not having been allowed the tools because of religion, not being allowed the tools to be our powerful selves, to create our own language, our own dialogue. We haven't created our own spaces. We have very little to do with what's at hand globally. And that is what I'm focusing on now. And that is where I think all this bullshit can stop. We can do it, alone because we already have. We can continue doing it. But the real way we can do it is if those strong men, that there aren't that many of them, if those strong men, protect us, even just standing with us, reciting exactly what we just said, so we don't have to repeat it to the other men who will refuse to listen to us. It really is women, the future female, like that. That's a real deal. And that, in my belief system, is the only way to clean up the earth, clean up the scam. And I believe that it's got to be global. It has to be an agreement. And of course there'll be the macho wise guys that will do what they've always done, blow us up. It's like the nature of man. There are some women who've had to play ball in the men's world very viciously and have been very successful at it. But I'm not thinking of those women. I'm not thinking of behaving like a man. I'm thinking of behaving like a woman. What we take care of as sisters, all these conversations I've had, that you've had, we've all had privately with our girlfriends, our family, strangers on the street who need help. I think that there are those that know and those who need help finding out, really. And it's all about communication. We need to use the technology that we have right now to amplify.
Why do you think women should be in positions of power?
Because women have raised the men on this earth, and the men have made a big mistake over and over and over and over and over.
What a way to end a conversation. To all the men out there, to all the beautiful allies out there.
I love men. Are you crazy?
I know. Me too. We love you.
I mean, what not to love?
Love you, Sean. Thank you for being on LaunchLeft. It means a lot.
You're amazing. I'm so proud of you. I don't know if that feels good to hear people say they're proud of you, but you do so much for so many people. And especially with this, you just are an angel on earth. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That I've never been called that. Thank you for being on the show. Really, I know it took a while, the journey, but thanks for sticking with me. We did it.
We did it. And we'll do more.
Hi, Mariah. Welcome to LaunchLeft Podcast. So glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Linqua Franqa, that's the name of your music artist self. Where did you get that name?
So I studied linguistics in grad school, and I draw a lot on what I learned about phonetics and syntax and morphology and like the way I write. And so at the time, and I was setting out on my rap career around the same time, I was thinking of a name and how, in linguistics, the lingua franca is a language used to communicate across cultural boundaries, like French and parts of like post-colonial Africa or, English on the internet. And so I was like, I want my music to do that also. Maybe without the colonizer piece, but connect people across cultural boundaries. So I'm hoping it does that.
Tell us a little bit about yourself outside of music. I know that you're a professor, I think, right, in Athens?
Well, yeah, I do have a PhD in language and literacy education, but I totally, upon graduating 2022, just kind of left that world behind and I went into the world of labor organizing. So I actually, by day, work with, fast food workers that are trying to organize their workplaces. And then by night, I do yet more activism, very involved with the movement to stop Cop City here in Atlanta, where I live. And is very interested in internationalism as well, just, paying attention to what's happening. And a lot of, speaking of colonialism, I was talking about French and English earlier at the top, just, what's going on in the global South and like how we living here in the States are implicated in how we can help fight back. So that's a little bit of what I do outside of making music, but also inside of the music itself as well, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And are you aware of Reverend Lawson? Have you ever...
James Lawson?
Yeah.
I think I cited him in my dissertation.
We're very blessed here in LA. He has like a monthly group that he'll bring people in and just talk about, a lot of what he speaks about is the labor movement here in Los Angeles. He's been an intrinsic part of shifting that and bringing, this kind of the Gandhian way into how we organize, and really powerful. I think he just turned 91 or something, and he's still doing it. Yeah. So I was speaking with Sean and we were having a deep discussion about, I guess what it landed on was like, are there any solutions to the kind of dominant culture that is somehow fixated on money and war and cruelty and subjugation and all these things that bum us out? And she said something like, all I could go to is personal responsibility, trying to be your own, buoy, change, show there's other ways of doing it. And she goes, yeah, put women in fucking power. And I was like, it kind of got chills. I was like, oh my God, yes. And we started talking about that. Do you feel would you agree with her that that's the way through? If we were able to be more of a matriarchy than a patriarchy, would we have a better shot at fixing some of these seemingly hard-worn habits, cultural habits?
Yeah, I certainly like to think so. I think there are also examples of like women who have used power for evil as well as good.
We talked about that.
Ultimately, the difference in whether someone uses it for good or bad comes down to money, like you said, in a culture that's so fixated around money and accumulation and this, greed that's driving things and it's behind things. And so I would say that we need more of a matriarchal society. We have to be, we have to be racism. We have to be classism. And ultimately, we have to be capitalism, because when you get down to where that greed is coming from, it's because we have a society where rich people, rich women, rich gay people, rich Black folks, or whoever it may be, can all serve the system that ends up harming other people. And if you take that money motive out from behind everything and let people kind of, speak and lead from a place of trying to correct those historical imbalances, then we're talking. Then we're cooking with gas. So that's what I'm trying to see.
That feels right, what you just said. And that's something that is so outside of how things operate that it feels really daunting to make those kinds of suggestions. But at the same time, until we try it, we won't realize how effective it is.
Yeah.
So we need to try it. It's like, let's give it a whirl. But, it's complex. Everything is complex. And I don't know. At the same time, it's all really simple if we could learn to love another and have that be the center of what have that centered over money and power. I think things would be better. It just would.
Period.
So thank you for sharing that message and also sharing it through your music. And I'm just really glad that we got introduced to you through Cat Power and that you were able to jump on this call. I know you're a busy woman and I appreciate your time. And
you too. Thank you so much for having me.
Communication Workers of America. United Campus Workers of Georgia 3265, bitch. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Workers ship the boxes, they Swiffer and they mop and look chipper whenever talking and whipping the shopping carts. They pack the beer in the walk-ins and stack the weird little boxes. Keep our kitchen fridges stocked and our financial markets solvent. They clocking for a pithy $50 and bear the coffin of like 60 thrifty chuds and get spit on like sitting ducks. So they are sick of getting fucked. So you ever wanted to honor them? Here's my ask for all my hominids. Collective bargaining, Amazon and Target and FedEx and Walmart and Instacart and Whole Foods till we all get what we ought to get. Workers run the company. There isn't any argument. So are you with them? Are you in? El Pueblo, unido, jamás será vencido. El Pueblo, unido, jamás será vencido. El Pueblo, unido, jamás será vencido. Jamás será vencido. Jamás será vencido. Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Which side are you on, my people? Which side are you on? Imagine a minute, millions of average women and men in the tragic position of trading in passion for wages and cash because they shackled by capitalism. Imagine a minute, millions of average citizens planting the spinach and waxing the kitchens and stacking the linens, contractors and renters and tenants, the labor extracted for pittance. What if they coordinated to address the sort of state of it in an organization? Cause fucking what? That's what organized labor does. And not even sort of, it's more of the crux. Taking the power from hoarders of bucks, big bankers offshore and they cuts, returning the value of labor to those who created the billionaires owe it to us. So if you're jaded and silly about waking up early, then earning bad. If you sad about Bernie, if you got a curious yearning and had it with passively lurking, we got your back and we happy to have you out on the picket line, actively working, going. Which side are you on? El Pueblo, unido, jamás será vencido. 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 Which side are you on?
LaunchLeft aims to create an intentional space that highlights and empowers all artists for whom radical creativity is not a choice, but a necessity. LaunchLeft begins with music, but its ultimate aim is to launch left-of-center artists in all creative fields.